Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Salatin. Our family co-owns Polyface Farm in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, which is kind of on the Atlantic seaboard of the U.S., about 3 hours from Washington, D.C., just to kind of get you oriented. We are in the mountains, and there are many wineries. You may know that when Thomas Jefferson went as the U.S. ambassador to France back in the early days of our country, he brought back many grape cuttings and started a vineyard around Monticello here, his home in Charlottesville, which is just east of us. And we now have an entire, a fairly large wine region in our area. And for the most part, they suffer the same issues as, the large wine growing regions of Europe, which of course have been running much longer than our wine growing regions here. I've been tasked with the question, why is a shift of paradigm in agriculture needed? And so that's what I'm going to concentrate on right now is do we need a shift? Why do we need a shift of paradigm? And I have four basic ideas here. The first one is we need a shift in agriculture because we have deteriorating soils. For the most part, our soils are deteriorating. When you look back over time in commercial agriculture, most places on the planet that have experienced commercial agriculture, this is the burden that commercial agriculture bears right now. If you study, archaeology and anthropology, that civilizations throughout history have struggled to maintain fertility, and so we have this deteriorating soil complex. In fact, the story of civilization is largely the story of rich resources, and a group of people moves in there and exploits the rich resources, becomes strong and viable and flourishing, and then over centuries, gradually that resource base, the soil, the water, all that gradually deteriorates. And so we are desperately in need of having a commercial agriculture program that builds soil rather than deteriorates soil. Number two, we have overall decreasing resiliency. And if you're a farmer like I am, you are well aware that in the big picture, resiliency is now more important than efficiency. You and I, as farmers, we have been told over and over that we need to be efficient. You need to be efficient. Well, I like efficiency too, but you can't have efficiency to the exclusion of resiliency, because if you aren't resilient first, you don't have anything to be efficient about. And so the first item is to survive, and survival means that you need the resource base. You need an active performing water cycle. You need immune function, and yes, plant immune function as well. All of those, when we think about resiliency, it's about being able to handle shocks and shocks in the system. And of course, we know right now in the world, we are in shocking times, from the war in Ukraine to COVID to the cost of fertilizer, the cost of energy and petroleum. We are in shocking times. And so as our farms become more and more dependent on chemicals, on scarce water, and suffer more disease and fungus and molds and different things, we are seeing at a very time when we need more forgiveness in our systems, we're seeing actually decreasing resiliency. And that's a real issue. The third issue is what I call dysfunctional succession. many of you realize that we are in an aging farmer situation, especially in the, what we call the first world. And I don't say that with any kind of, condescension to other countries or anything else, but in Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand, what's known historically as first world nations, Japan, we are seeing a tremendous decline in young farmers coming in. And right now in the United States, the average age of farmers is 60 years old. If you look at business books, they will tell you that in an economic sector, when the average age of the practitioners is more than 35, it's an economic sector in decline. So in agriculture here, we're at 60, not 35. In fact, in the US, you may be interested to know that we now have almost twice as many people in prison as we have farmers. There's no other country in the world that has that crazy a ratio. And so, if you're an author like I am and you write books to encourage farmers, it gives you pause to realize I would have twice as many buyers for my books if I wrote about how to be a successful prisoner than how to be a successful farmer. So we are in a dysfunctional succession. We don't have we have the aging farmer and we don't have the young people coming in. Mainly that's due to the cost of entry. The capitalization cost of entering farming is extremely heavy, and that's why on our farm we have developed models to allow a young person to enter farming with pocket change. So you don't have this tremendous capitalization cost. Our problem is we have old farmers that want to get out. We have young farmers that want to get in, and the problem is that when the old farmers can't get out, the young farmers can't get in, and when the young farmers can't get in, the old farmers can't get out, and so we have this big breakdown of succession. That's a major problem. And the fourth issue, and the last one that I'll mention here, is what I call deficient economics. In general, we have a crushing, a continued narrowing of our margins, the ability to make a profit on the farm, especially because as equipment gets more expensive, as land gets more expensive, as inputs get more expensive relative to the value of what we produce, farmers are caught in this expense elevation with a relatively flat, yes, it goes up some, but a relatively flat income situation. The price of a bushel of grapes, for example, the price of a bushel of grapes has not kept up with the price of the cost of a tractor tire. In the last 20 years, a tractor tire, just for example, a tractor tire has escalated, 700 or 800%, and that bushel of grapes has escalated maybe 200%, and so and this then pushes farmers to try to squeeze more and more out of less and less to increase production on this kind of a treadmill to solve this escalating margin problem. So what do we do about that? So we have the deteriorating soil, we have the decreasing resiliency, we have the dysfunctional succession, and we have the deficient economics. I hope you like my alliteration here. And so what do we do about that? And so those are the problems. So let's shift a little bit to what are some solutions. And I would suggest that the first solution is we need to focus our attention on our farms on decomposition. I've got three more D's here. If you can stand English D's, we're okay here. Decomposition. So what our soils need desperately is organic matter. it needs biomass. So the way, the way the ecology works, the sun shines in the sky, and it, through photosynthetic activity, it grows plants. Plants then grow, and they go through their life cycle and decompose. Some plants shed leaves. Some plants are eaten by animals, obviously, but essentially what drives the system is decomposition. And so we have to start thinking about integrating all sources of biomass. I don't know how it is in, I've been to Spain numerous times, love being in Spain, but I know that here in the US, 75 to 80%, so 75 to 80% of all of the material that has gone in quote unquote sanitary landfills is decomposable material. That is an astounding thought. And so essentially everything from food scraps to wood chips to broken pallets, yard waste, tree trimmings, vineyard prunings, all of this biomass material needs to be decomposed through composting processes, whatever process will work to decompose that. That is the life of the soil. That's what feeds the biology of the soil to make the soil productive. And so on our farm, for example, in a half a century of being here, we have moved our organic matter from 1% when we came in 1961 to today, it is 8.2%. And we have done this with a tremendous amount of composting and integration. So we integrate our forest land, we prune trees, we take out crooked trees and sick trees, and we integrate our forest land and our open land in a symbiotic, integrated relationship rather than a segregated relationship. One of the problems that we have, I think, as farmers is we tend to think of ourselves as very simplistic farmers. I'm a wine grower, or I'm a cattle producer, or I'm an apple producer. We don't think of ourselves in the broad array of ecological needs that our womb needs. That's the best way I can say it. So decomposition. Number two is diversity. And that speaks directly to what I was just suggesting, that we need to view ourselves as caretakers of an ecology rather than producers of a commodity. There's a big difference. If I'm just a producer of a commodity, I am completely focused on how can I produce that faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper, all those kinds of things. And I tend to not think about the earthworms, the soil biology, the pollinators, the beehives, all of the diversified life that sustains that ecosystem. And so in general, we believe that there is no animal-less ecosystem. All ecosystems have animals because animals perform tremendous functions, not least of which is some of them peck, some of them scratch, some of them prune. They all poop, and they all, generate this wonderful material. And so incorporating animals into vineyards, for example, I've been to places where they use sheep to graze under the plants, under the vineyard. So rather than spraying herbicides and chemicals to make a sterile base, you actually cultivate a perennial ground cover that grows spiders and bugs and birds and all sorts of life around those vines. and you have this abundance of diversified life that acts as a check and balance. Now, the people that I have seen who have done this most, the best, have been people who spread out their vines so that they can get, for example, chicken shelters or sheep or something through. And what happens is their production per acre of grapes goes down, but their diseases are all gone. They don't have any fungus anymore. They don't have any mold anymore, because by layering an animal component on the vineyard and spreading out the vines, now they get more airflow. It simply works better. And so the reduction in actual grapes per acre is more than compensated in fewer expenses, and you have eggs to sell, or you have something else. I had a friend in Belize, Central America, down in the tropics. He had a citrus operation, and he began running chickens under the citrus. The chickens picked up the dropped fruit where the pathogens and disease, over season. And so the chicken scavenged out all the bugs, ate out all the drop fruit. Suddenly he didn't have any disease in his citrus, so he didn't have to spray anything. And he had eggs to sell along with his citrus. So these are the kinds of very complex relational diversity things that we want to see. The final thing is decentralization. So we have decomposition, diversity, and decentralization. What I mean by that is we, in general, what we want to see is scale by duplication and not amalgamation. So often we kind of have this factory mentality that we produce one thing. The bigger the processing facility, the better. And the more acres we can put together in one spot, the better. And the fact is that nature is all about spreading out. It's highly democratized, and it wants to be decentralized, not amalgamated in centralization. So what we like to see are more smaller modular processing facilities, marketing endeavors, production units, so that we actually have more varied participation within the system. There are more brands involved, more people involved, and more creativity, bearing on what's going on. So decomposition, diversity, and decentralization are the basic concepts to let's say to mitigate the deteriorating soil, the decreasing resiliency, the dysfunctional succession, and the deficient economics that we addressed at the beginning. And so my encouragement to everyone here at the conference is to really seek out some of those more chemical-free, organic matter oriented, maybe direct marketing, doing some more for yourself, increasing resiliency, and that together we'll be able to make an agriculture that is actually attractive to millennials, attractive to the next generation, so that we can populate our rural countrysides, our farms, with a new generation of excited, creative, entrepreneurial, ecology caressing young people. That's the vision.